So for the duration of year 12, the topic you get to study is me, myself and I, which is really fun and interesting because you get to look at your own interests and express them in new and exciting ways. So here's just a quick introduction I did with some photos of my family, my interests, just to show the beginning of the topic. And I did similar here with just some examples of my environment and my family and things that make me the person that I am. Following on from that, we began looking at your environment and how that forms part of your identity. So here I've got a digital image that I did of Dylan Thomas, and also showing Swansea in the 1920s versus now and how that's developed, as I'm quite interested in history. So it's really interesting because you get to look at many different aspects that interest you, whether it be digital work or looking more traditionally with watercolours, or here I used alcohol-based markers. So it's really interesting because you have more freedom to explore and use materials that you may never have done before. Here I'm still looking at identity, and I drew myself on top of a map to show my connection with where I live and Swansea, and also a bus ticket. Here is where it gets really interesting. We get to do a lot more experimenting at A-level, such as coleograph prints. So here I created one where I used many different materials, whether it be wool, hot glue, buttons, corrugated cardboard, popsicle sticks, lots of different things to create a stamp that I could then paint over and put through the printing press, and it came out with these results, which I really enjoyed doing. And it helps you to understand what avenues you might not have considered before that are actually something that you really enjoy and you might move forward with then when it comes to a final piece later on. So here I'm still looking at my personal environment and trying to show them as my identity, hence why they're in the shape of my head. Then we did some wax resist. That was really interesting, using some crayons and then watercolour to show how the sea was formed here. We also did some mono prints, so using inks again in new and exciting ways. I hadn't done this before, but I really enjoyed doing it. And what's amazing is that even if the experience doesn't work out the way you'd hoped, you can learn from that, and that's something that also contributes to your work, showing how you've attempted something and maybe it hasn't worked out how you've wished for it to, but then growing from that and learning more about what really interests you. Here's some artist research. So if you're into clay, this is a really nice opportunity to take a part of your environment and analyse it in more depth and detail and try and recreate it. So I took a small part of a local pub and I created that then out of clay. So I've shown the steps here, and then the final piece, which was really fun to paint, and I enjoyed putting that together. Here we have some artist research, looking at different artists and how they present their environments. Hannah Davis was one of my favourites, so then I decided to take that forward and I used the coleograph print once again, but I created a new one as that was my favourite process, and then used Hannah Davis's style to integrate the two, and that was really interesting to see how you can use your previous experiences and your artist research and link the two and form exciting new pieces and ideas. Here we did some texture replication, so this was really fun. We went around the school and gathered some different materials and textures from different places, and was able to have a look at how those can be used to form your environment as well, and how they can replicate that. Then I really enjoy portraiture, so this was a really fun part for me, was to look at how family form your identity. So here I've got a photo of myself underneath, and I used photos of different members of my family to show how they are a part of me, and my cat and my friends, and a portrait of my sisters then that I did in pen, and then some annotations, and then a portrait of myself as well, so you get to look at who you are as a person and also how you your family and your environment inform that. These are just some extra little bits I did on portraiture, as I quite enjoy that, and then a family friend here that I painted as well. So you can use both traditional and non-traditional materials, and that's a really fun opportunity. Then we looked at using some paper to form the shadows and textures of an image. And after having a go at this and being led through it by the teachers, I then created my own with a photo of my dad. Then we did some photography. So if you like photography as well, this is a really nice opportunity to explore that in your work and use it as a basis for what you do. So here I was looking at how I can represent my family and my friends in different objects and what they can portray as standalone objects and as a collective. So then I just analysed some of my favourite pieces here, and again looked at some artist research and different ways in which they portray things. And then I've got some felt making here. That was a really fun opportunity that I'd never done before. That's the wonderful thing about A-level, is you get to do so many different things that you don't get to do so much at GCSE, and also things that you may have never encountered, but that's where the fun of it really lies. So here I did a little felt piece of a palm tree because I have family from the Caribbean, and batik. I really enjoyed batik, using candle wax and filling in then the spaces you leave with watercolour. So that was a really fun opportunity, and that was one of my favourite experimentations. So I then created a final piece with the batik for this section of work, and use the artist research once again to inform what I did here. We also did some silk painting, again something that I'd never done, but that was really enjoyable, and I've documented the process here. Then we move on to vanitas, which is a contextually informed study, so you get to look a bit more at the history of it and how that's informed how paintings are done now. And again, if you like traditional materials, you get to use oils here, which I again had never really used much before, but I really enjoyed the opportunity and found out a lot more about materials that I didn't know I would enjoy, and I'd never thought I would, but have changed the way I look at art and the way I produce my work. So here I took some of my own photographs at Christmas time and did a painting of a similar style, and then also took some photos. So once again, if you like photography, this is a really nice opportunity to explore that in your compositions. So I took some objects that I thought resembled me and my interests, and tried to create different meanings and compositions through that. So here I'm looking at the shapes created and how that is typically done in a vanitas piece, and how I could recreate that in my own work. And then I produced a final painting here in oils, and just explained the process there. Then you get to go down your own avenue of completely your own decision, whether it be going into maybe digital work or clay work, or choosing a specific style that you want to look at. So for me, that was pointillism. I was really interested by the detail and the texture that can be created with it, so I wanted to move forward with that. And as mentioned previously, I quite like portraiture, so I wanted to explore how I could present myself and my interests in that way. So here I've just stated what I intended to do. And I wanted to look at progression, so how the aging process of myself or my family and friends can take place, and how that changes who we are. So I really like English and literature, so I also looked at how this was presented in English. So that's the fun thing, is that you really get to take it in whatever direction interests you most. So here I'm looking at some pictures of myself when I was younger, and then them developing, so going from a baby, a young child, to now. And then I looked at the actual style of pointillism and how that is created. Then I was looking at some pointillism artists. So Toru was an artist that really interested me in how he created his works. So I then had a go at using his style, similarly with Roy Lichtenstein. and Renoir, who's also famous for his pointillism. So you really get to choose who you want to look at and why, and how that informs your own work. I then took some images of myself and created some different compositions that I could possibly use. Again, experimenting with different materials to get a feel for what interests you most. Here I'm just working in the style of the artist that I was looking at, and I actually did some digital work here. So once again, if that is what interests you, that's really fun to do, and you can get it in any way you want. And then here I have a final composition which I then created using pointillism, and did a final piece of myself from a younger age and myself now in the middle. So this was the final result then of the Year 12 work, and as I said, it was a really enjoyable experience because I could take what I'd learnt previously, and that then helped to inform what I created later, which was of my own accord, but was still based on what I'd learnt previously, and it was a really enjoyable experience.